My name is Zachary Conan, and today I'm answering a question that was asked to me by an anonymous person through my Twitter, my Curious Cat, links in the description. I typically answer anything you guys ask, or at least I normally do. So just keep plugging away. Sometimes I decide to make whole videos about them, whole discussions, and that's what this is. So on with this question. Thanks for asking it. By the way, whoever you are, do you personally feel Hitchcock can be oversold in some critical circles? I've gotten the feeling from some of your videos that you have closer affinities with directors who took after Hitchcock and took his ideas and formal techniques into new directions, a la Roman Polanski and Brian De Palma. I'm wondering if you think directors such as Polanski or De Palma are not given their due because of constant comparisons to Hitchcock, rather than analyzing what they do different and in some cases, dare I say, better than Hitch. Would be interested in your thoughts, if I'm right about your tastes, or if you agree with the questions I've posited. So, there are like two ways to answer this, and it's not going to be a non-answer. I'll give you a real answer for sure. First is Hitchcock overrated? And do I feel that Roman Polanski and Brian De Palma are better Hitchcocks than Hitchcock, essentially? Well, first of all, I can't even understand an argument for why Hitchcock would be overrated. I don't understand that argument whatsoever. If I come off the way I do in certain videos of perhaps the Brian De Palma versus Roman Polanski video, or some Roman Polanski focused videos, I might kind of brush aside Hitchcock for a second. Because that's only because if you do anything Hitchcockian, you are forever branded a pupil of Hitchcock, which certain filmmakers like Truffaut would love, and they would wear that tattoo like a badge of honor, like some sort of kind of holy brand. But Roman Polanski, I feel, elevates Hitchcockian language. Polanski transcends Hitchcockian language. I really think tells far more devastating tales, far more suspenseful tales. I feel that he has really pioneered the language of Hitchcock into realms not yet charted before. And I think that Polanski is a much better filmmaker than Hitchcock. And this is not to say that Hitchcock is overrated at all. We're talking about one of the building blocks of film grammar, of the language of film. Certain film, John Ford, Alfred Hitchcock, Jean Renoir, you cannot say these people are overrated. You really can't, but they are untouchables. I will put them in an untouchable kind of category, because I don't even understand arguments saying that any three of those directors are overrated because of what they truly brought to film and how well their films still work and operate. The voyeuristic qualities that Alfred Hitchcock employed in his movies quite regularly, almost religiously, have still not been bettered. Brian De Palma, I think Body Double is an amazing movie. I think it's a better film than Rear Window, but almost for reasons that are diametrically at odds with what made Hitchcock's Rear Window so great. Body Double is an erotic deconstruction of that film, and it does it in kind of trashy, splashy, excessive, opulent, operatic dimensions. Brian De Palma will always be compared to Hitchcock, and that is completely by De Palma's design. You can't be upset about De Palma being constantly compared to Hitchcock when De Palma goes out of his way to evoke Hitchcock. Now, of course, he's not trying to do something better than Hitchcock. He's not trying to even follow Hitchcockian sensibilities as a purist would. Brian De Palma is trying to deconstruct Alfred Hitchcock, trying to rework it to fit into his his erotic daydreams and gutter fantasies. That's what De Palma tries to do, and he succeeds completely. But when we get to someone like Roman Polanski is a master in his own right. And yes, I'm not blind to the fact that every time I talk about Roman Polanski, it does get a little controversial in the comment section. And that's because he's a very controversial, complicated kind of person, a polarizing kind of figure. But when you look at films like Rosemary's Baby, Chinatown, Knife in the Water, Repulsion, Frantic, and even The Ninth Gate, The Tenant, for instance. These are all films that are better than anything that Hitchcock has provided us in terms of the language of suspense, in terms of the language of suspense cinema, of thriller cinema. I think that Roman Polanski, while I do see frequent comparisons to Hitchcock, I think he's completely removed and separate from Hitchcock. I think that he, sure, definitely took Hitchcockian elements and techniques, but spent no time completely moving beyond the building blocks of Psycho, of suspicion, of, Rebecca, Notorious, and Psycho. Like, he moved completely beyond that rather quickly. Roman Polanski is a very, very interesting and great filmmaker, and a completely visceral filmmaker. And that might be also what separates Roman Polanski from Alfred Hitchcock as well. I don't believe De Palma is too visceral. And by visceral, I mean emotional through violence. Emotional in a way that you could feel, a tactile kind of way. But if these are directors who are best at making thrillers, it's visceral in a way that is guttural, in a way that kind of affects you in a very awful kind of way, in a way that leaves you stunned, speechless, and afraid. Now, I've seen a lot of criticism of Alfred Hitchcock where they say that emotionality is lacking in his films, and I'm not on board with that. I don't think that his films lack emotionality, but I do feel that some of his films lack emotionality through violence with intent. The only way that I can really elaborate on this is to actually look at Roman Polanski's films, specifically Macbeth, or Chinatown, or The Pianist even, something that he made that was almost in a direct reference, subconscious or not, to a past traumatic event in his life. People do like to forget that he basically grew up in a concentration camp, and that's where he came of age. His wife was murdered. His wife and unborn child were murdered by the Manson family, and of course he was exiled as well. And he made several artistic responses to these events in his life, Macbeth being a direct response to the murder of his unborn child and wife, Sharon Tate. And it's completely visceral. It is ultra-violent. It is beyond violent. It's also beyond affecting. It is absolutely, completely visceral. That is the word, and it's full of a blunt emotionality. It's full of a truthful emotionality, a jagged emotionality, a kind of damaged emotionality as well. When you watch Chinatown, when you get Forget It, Jake, it's just Chinatown, you feel everything that the director, Roman Polanski, has been through up to that point. And you also feel all of the skeletons in Roman's closet, because I'm not a person here who is saying that he is innocent of anything. I'm actually a person who is saying that I don't want artists to be healthy, normal people. I want some of them to be kind of dangerous subversives. I want some of them to be something completely horrifying, as long as they're honest to me through their art, through what they produce. And Polanski certainly is telling us he has several skeletons in his closet, but he's trying to tell us that everybody does as well, that we're all devils, that we're all demons. Rosemary's Baby is a perfect example of this. And Rosemary's Baby is excellent because it's about a woman's choice to choose, right? That's really the underlying metaphorical concept of it, but it's a very visceral kind of idea of it, because Roman Polanski understands the meta-conceptual idea, the fourth wall breakage, that this woman is being conducted by a male director off-screen, just like Repulsion makes you feel completely out of line, makes you feel like a criminal, an invader, a stalker for objectifying Catherine Deneuve. But Roman Polanski knows that Catherine Deneuve is one of the most beautiful and sexy women ever photographed on the face of planet Earth, and it is nearly impossible not to objectify her, even if she's portrayed as prepubescent and innocent in a sort of way. So he's making you into a criminal, and he's punishing you for idolizing her, for objectifying her, for fantasizing about her. He's doing that in the process of creating Repulsion. Now that's a kind of complication, more than a voyeuristic complication. That is a sophistication that Hitchcock never really tapped into. Because what Hitchcock was afraid of, and Polanski to an extent, but Polanski can't help but be honest in his work. I don't think Hitchcock was a liar in his work. Hitchcock was afraid of letting people in completely. He was an extremely private man. And He would deny that there was any need to psychoanalyze his films. He would deny that there was a direct connection between food and sex in his films, although there is. That's part of the language of Hitchcock. Polanski would probably deny that there's a direct connection between Macbeth and the slaughter that he experienced in his life, but he is willing to at least unfold it on the screen and tell you it in its complete glory. I don't believe that Hitchcock was completely honest behind the camera. Like I said, I don't think he's a liar, but I think he's holding back because he's afraid of prying eyes. He doesn't want people to see directly inside of the soul of the director. Whereas Polanski, I think, can't help but put a magnifying glass up to his wretched and damaged soul, which is also full of talent and full of this kind of zeal. And it's a wonderful artistic spirit. But Hitchcock was so reserved sometimes to make it seem like his characters lacked emotion. And it seemed that way, but it wasn't true. You just had to crack through an exterior. But that exterior shouldn't have to be cracked if his films have such a voyeuristic form to them in the first place. So there are problems with Hitchcock. But overall, when you put on Suspicion, when you put on Rebecca or Notorious, when you sit there and watch it, you completely forget about it. Because his films still work perfectly every single time you watch them, and they're some of the best films on the planet. We're talking Vertigo, we're talking Psycho, and The Birds. We're talking a remarkable filmography here. Polanski, you put it on, and not only does it still work, you're not the same after a great Roman Polanski film. You are fractionally different, fractionally irreparable, and fractionally damaged and kind of poisoned in a way. I love dangerous kinds of art, and I feel that Roman Polanski makes that. He makes that kind of dangerous art. He's not afraid of hyper-intimacy, hypersensitivity, and emotionality through violence, which I think gives it a truly and purely cinematic, visceral edge. Am I sick of Polanski being compared to Hitchcock? Well, I don't see that as often anymore, really. Whenever Polanski enters a conversation, it's normally about politics, things like that. De Palma, I don't even think De Palma is sick of De Palma being compared to Alfred Hitchcock, but I believe he's being compared to him for the wrong reasons. De Palma is a Hitchcock deconstructionist. He's not exactly a pupil of Hitchcock. He's studied Hitchcock wonderfully, greatly, deeply, and intensely, but it's almost as if he's trying to poke holes in the master. He's trying to show that the master has wrinkles, and the master certainly does, and through certain films like Dressed to Kill, Body Double, Blowout, you can definitely see where De Palma is kind of exposing cinema for what it is, which is essentially one giant lie, one giant insincerity that is truly just trying to appear as cinema, but operating as some kind of nihilistic, erotic psycho-fantasy, psychosexual fantasy. And that's really what De Palma exposes. What Polanski does is completely elevate the language of Hitchcock into something completely different, and I just call it Polanski. Polanski is Polanski, and I don't think he's in debt to Hitchcock, really. I really don't. I think Polanski is on a whole other level entirely. But is Hitchcock overrated? No. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. If people think that Hitchcock was the end-all, be-all, that Hitchcock started and ended, like, that cinema began and it completed with Hitchcock, then you'd still have a very difficult time arguing that. When I put on a Hitchcock film, I feel like I am in the realm of pure cinema. I really do. Pure cinema. No, Alfred Hitchcock is not overrated. Alfred Hitchcock could not be praised enough, really. It's just that he was so amazing at what he did, just like every Western director will be compared to John Ford, every French director for a long period of time, who at least dealt with kind of like social political like comedies or commentaries were compared to Jean Renoir, like the building blocks of film. They're there for a reason. If you remove a foundation, or if you condemn a foundation to be unworthy of being there, or overrated or overvalued, then you have condemned the entire cathedral of film. No, Alfred Hitchcock is perfectly rated. If tomorrow people started calling him God, the resurrection of Jesus Christ himself, I would be like, well, I can't exactly argue with that one. You're probably right. Alfred Hitchcock was an absolute genius. I believe that Polanski was a more complicated, more successful, more visceral, and more gripping and impactful filmmaker. But Hitchcock will always be the more iconic one, and it's an icon that he deserves. He deserves his legend. He deserves his status. Oh, well, that was a good question. That was a good question. Remember to subscribe. Ask me some more questions. They don't all get videos. It's just when I have nothing planned, like today. I thought this would be a good topic because we're talking about some of my favorite directors here, and I always jump on the whatever opportunity I can to talk about these certain people. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Like the video in the comments. Do you think Hitchcock is overrated? I would really love to know. How do you feel Polanski and De Palma rank against Hitchcock? Like, how does Rosemary's Baby rank against Hitchcock's best? How does Blowout or Phantom of the Paradise rank against Hitchcock's best in a kind of bizarro world or universe kind of way? Thank you guys for watching this video. My name is Zachary Conan. Like it. Like this video. Help out this channel with engagement. Have a good day.